Okay, let's talk about types of prayer. Types of prayer in the Bible. First of all, there is the prayer of submission. The prayer of submission. Now, go with me over to Matthew 26. Matthew 26. And this prayer is the one, and you can find a number of references to this, but this one here is the one that I think the best example is the one that was offered by the Lord in the Garden of Gethsemane. By the Lord that was offered in the Garden of Gethsemane. Now here Jesus is on the night in which He's going to be betrayed. Remember? He's in the garden called Gethsemane. Verse 36, Matthew 26. Let me go to verse 36. 26, 36. Let me back up a few more verses. Then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane and said to His disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and" what? Pray. And He took with Him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee and began to be grieved and distressed. And this is Jesus Christ in His humanity. Jesus in His humanity. Is He under a great deal of stress? Does deity get distressed? Deity does not. Deity is omniscient. He's omnipresent. He's omnipotent. He doesn't wear out. God doesn't get tired. But this is Jesus Christ, remember, in hypostatic union. He is perfectly God and perfectly man. But in His humanity, He's going to the cross. Right? And Peter says that in His own body He bore our sins. Not in His deity, but in His humanity He bore our sins. So this is Christ going to the cross. He knows He's about to die. And in His humanity, and He's 100% God and 100% man combined together forever into one person. But in His humanity, He's going to the cross and He's going to die. And in His humanity, He's going to bear the sins of all humanity. In His humanity, His perfect humanity, He's going to die a substitutionary death. And He's going to bear, in His humanity, in His perfect humanity, He's going to bear the sins of all mankind, right, upon His body. So He's grieved about it. He's concerned about it. Now Christ, when He was upon the cross, and all of our sins were poured out upon Him from noon to 3, He was, at that time, judged in our place. And during that time, He bore the wrath that rightfully belonged to us. And it is argued by many that He was separated from the Father during those 3 hours. And that from noon to 3, when He cried out, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, my God, why hast Thou" what? "Forsaken me." Because for those 3 hours, He was alone. And it's an amazing thing to think about. That up to the point of that time, from noon to 3, He did not cry out. He can endure the beatings, the crown of thorns. He can endure the blows, the ridicule. And Isaiah says that as a lamb is silent before his shearers, so is the Son of Man, that He did not let out the tiniest little peep. It was not a word that He uttered. Nothing. All of the beatings He could endure. But when that sky grew dark and that judgment was poured out upon Him, because all of our sins were placed upon Him, at that moment, when that judgment began, then and then alone did He cry out, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. My God, why hast Thou forsaken me?" And the tense of the Greek is a present tense, which implies ongoing action, that He continued to cry out almost throughout the duration that He was on the cross. My God, why hast Thou forsaken me?" That it wasn't just a one-time thing that He cried out, but that it may have occurred the whole time while He was on the cross. So when you get to verse 38, it says, "And then He said to them, My soul is deeply grieved to the point of death. Remain here and keep watch with me." Verse 39, "And He went a little beyond them and fell on His face, praying, and said, My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Let this cup pass from me." But how does He finish it? "Yet not as I will, but as You will." So this is a prayer in which, in one sense, He's asking if there's any way that this cup can pass from me, if there's any way that this can happen, then let it pass. But what is ultimately his prayer? Not my will, but thy will. And so this is an example of a prayer of submission, in which he says, not my will, but thy will be done. Now this is a complete turnaround from the Garden of Eden. Because the Garden of Eden, they had it so simple. There was no pressure at all, hardly, upon them. Perfect environment. And there was just the one temptation of the fruit of the tree. If you can call that much pressure. Right? And Satan said, oh, look how beautiful. Makes a great pie. Right? Steve's spin. But not really a whole lot of pressure. And in effect, what was the response? It was not thy will, but my will. And that's what sin is. Sin is any time we set our will against the will of God. Sin is any time we set our will against the will of God. And that's what happened in heaven when Lucifer set his will against the will of God. It's what happened in the Garden of Eden when Adam and Eve set their will against the will of God. And what happens here in the Garden of Gethsemane is we see Christ here in his humanity, and he's struggling, and he's saying, Father, if there's any way that this cup can pass from me, and yet in the final analysis, what does he say? He says, not my will, but what? Thy will be done. And isn't that where we struggle too? Don't we struggle when we face difficult situations? And sometimes isn't the Father's will difficult? Isn't it? If we're honest, isn't it? But the prayer of submission comes to the Father and says, Father, this is difficult. I know it's difficult. And if there's a way out, Father, let me see it. But if there's no way out, if there's no other way and I have to bear it, then not my will, but thy will be done. And Christ models that here. In perfect humanity. Of course, you can read on through the rest of that. But I think you get the point of it, don't you?